Okay guys, so for today for social studies, we're going to work on a map skill on reading road maps. So go ahead and open your social studies textbook to page 352. You don't need your vocabulary notebook today, We're not adding any new vocabulary, so all you need is your textbook, and it should be open to page 352. And go ahead and read with me while I read out loud. Read a road map. Why it matters. A road map shows the roads that connect places and the distances between those places. You can use a road map to find the best way to get somewhere. So now we're going to follow these steps to read this road map that you have on page 353. So step 1 is to use the map key to see what kind of road each line color stands for. Knowing the kinds of roads helps you choose good routes. So if we look over here at this key, we see that the blue thick line shows an interstate highway. Those are those high-speed, limited access highways. So you have to take the exits. You can't there's no red lights. You just keep going until there's traffic or it's time for you to get off at the exit. The thin red line shows a United States highway. So they are still a little bit more high speed, but they aren't as limited access. They don't necessarily have exits, at least not all the way along it. So there might be times where you are on a United States highway and all of a sudden you're in a town and you might hit a red light. It's the same for state highways, but the difference is United States highways actually continue across much of the United States. And since we're looking at a road map of New Mexico, we'll actually see a really cool United States highway. It's not an interstate, but it goes all the way. We have it here, the same exact road. We could take it from here to a place in New Mexico, and we'd be on the same road every time. It's really cool. I actually discovered this while I was actually in New Mexico a few years ago. And then, of course, a state highway is a road that really only keeps its same name or number in the state, whereas United States highways are the same number across multiple states. Then we know a star shows the state capital, and let's see, this little orangish stuff shows a metropolitan area. Okay, so now let's look at these roads. So we can see that Interstate 40, which we do have here, but that's not even the road I was talking about. So Interstate 40, if you guys have been on 40, which all of you have at some point, that is what an interstate is. There's no red lights, you can't just easily turn, you don't stop unless there's traffic, you just keep going, and the speed limits are higher than just our neighborhood streets. So in New Mexico, we have Interstate 40 that goes from east to west across the state. And then we also see Interstate 25, which goes from north to south on the state. And then down here, we can actually also see Interstate 10. Interstate 10 comes up from Texas, from the border of Texas to Las Cruces, and then continues west. Let's see, and those are all of the interstates that we can see, and then we see the state roads. And I want you to look, the United States highways. And I want you to find the U.S. Highway 64, right here. We see 64 right here, and it actually continues, but we just don't see the name, because sometimes one road can be a state highway and a United States highway. So right here we see State Highway 64, and it goes across the whole northern part of the state. And U.S. Highway 64 is actually the same, it goes through Memphis. U.S. 64 goes through Memphis, and if you've ever been on Stage Road, you've been on U.S. 64, which goes all the way to New Mexico. I discovered this when I was going to visit my brother in Colorado a few years. And my mom and I spent the night in Taos, New Mexico, right here. and I saw US Highway 64, and I was like, is that the same US 64 that goes through Memphis? And I looked it up, and it was. So those red ones are the US highways, which means they go across multiple states. Now some may just go across like 2 or 3 states, but then there's ones like US 64, which continues across almost the entire United States. If you've ever heard of Route 66, that was an old US state highway. It's not used so much anymore, but there are some places where Route 66, which is an old US highway, meets along or is the same route as Interstate 40, really around here. Let's see, and then we see all of the state highways, which are these green ones we see over here. You can see that they aren't as long. Like if we look at State Highway 52, we can see it just goes from Interstate 25 up to US Highway 60. So state highways are just within the state. Usually they're not super long, whereas US highways might go across multiple states, and then interstates are those, they go across multiple states too, or even across the whole country, like Interstate 40. But they have limited access, which means you can only get on or off at exits. You can't just turn off. There's no red lights, and they usually don't end anywhere and then start again, except for in the case of I-40, which ends at Overton. You have to Overton Park. Okay, now step 2. Now we've done this before, and what I want you to do is in your packet for Friday, May 8th, I included a Post-it note, this green Post-it note, on your Read a Roadmap sheet. So I want you to pull that off right now, because we're going to do what we did before when we did map scale. So pull that Post-it note off. I'm going to use this yellow piece of paper to represent my Post-it note, because my Post-it note is a lot smaller. My Post-it note is smaller than the map scale up here, but I'm going to show you what to do. So in your book, it says use the map scale to find out how many miles are represented by 1 inch. Well, what you're going to do, just like what we did before, is you're going to take your Post-it note, find the map scale, which is right here, between where it says Mexico and Texas, and underneath the southern border of New Mexico. And what you're going to do is you're going to line the top of your Post-it note up with the miles. So line the top of your Post-it note up with the miles, and then go ahead and make a mark at 0 miles, 50 miles, and 100 miles, and then label it. 0, 50, and 100 miles. Okay? Then, turn it over and find the, well, you don't have to turn it over, actually. I'm sorry. Keep it like that, but then line the bottom up with the kilometers. So, start it, mark the 0 kilometers, 50 kilometers, and 100 kilometers, and then label it. 0, 50, and 100 kilometers. And you can use that just like we did before when we did use a map scale. You can use that to figure out the distance between 2 places. So now that we know the difference between interstate highways, US highways, state highways, and we have our measurements for our map scale, let's answer these questions, these practice questions. So number 1 says, what interstate highway connects Albuquerque and Las Cruces? I can't do a Spanish accent, so it doesn't sound great. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this map, and we're going to find Albuquerque, put one finger on Albuquerque, and then we're going to find Las Cruces, and we're going to put the other finger on Las Cruces, and then we're going to see what interstate highway, so that thick blue line, goes between the two. So I'm going to give you a minute to find them. Try to find them on your own. And now, Albuquerque is here. Las Cruces is right here. And if we take one finger and travel down to the other, we see that Interstate 25 is the interstate that runs between Albuquerque and Las Cruces. Now, number 2, what United States highways and state highways would you use to get from Grants to Silver City? So again, what we're going to do is we are going to find these two places. We're going to find Grants and we're going to find Silver City. And then we're going to figure out there's going to be state highways and United U.S. highways that we're going to have to take. So we're going to figure out, okay, first you take this road. We're going to start at Grants. We're going to say, okay, first you take this road, then you take this road, and then you take this one, and so on until we get there. So let's find Grants. I want you to take a minute to find it. And then make sure that you find Silver City. Okay, so if you haven't found it yet, go ahead and pause. If you have, here's Grants, here's Silver City. So what we have to do now is we have to figure out, okay, what state highways and what U.S. highways do we have to take? Now, I can see the highways, but I can't tell what color they are. So, and obviously I don't live in New Mexico, so I'm going to have to look at my book as I do this. Okay, so we're starting at Grants, and we're trying to get down here to Silver City. So you know what? I'm going to put a mark. Please don't do that in your book because once you erase, it's hard to find it. Okay, so first, since I'm starting here and I need to get down here, well first, let me just trace the best route. Okay, so now I've traced the best route. I don't want to go up here and then down because then I've added all this extra bit that I don't have to do. So first, I want to go down, let's see, State Highway 117 until I get to the where State Highway 117 and State Highway 36 meet. Then I want to take State Highway 36, and once I get to US Highway 60, it changes to State Highway 32. And then I get to the intersection of State Highway 32 and is that, let's see. Oh, and State Highway 12. And so then I'm going to take State Highway 12 until I get to US Highway 180. And then I want to get on US Highway 180 and take that all the way to Silver City. So I start on State Highway 117, then get on State Highway 36, then I get on State Highway 32, and then State Highway 12, and then US Highway 180 all the way into Silver City. Road maps are really fun. If you have a road map at home or an atlas, you can come up with all different ways to get anywhere, and it's really cool because if you want to plan a vacation for your family, you can find cool stuff along the way if you look at a road map. Now, number 3, that's where we have to use our map scale. It says, about how many miles would you have to drive to get from Alamogordo to Carlsbad? Okay, so I'm going to erase these. If you used your pencil, if you insist on using your pencil, please do it very, very lightly so that it's easy to erase without erasing all the ink. And then we're going to find Alamogordo and Carlsbad. So, let's see. Try to find Alamogordo. And I'm finding these two because I found them earlier, but now I can't remember. And Carlsbad. Well, I found both of them. Okay, so I found Alamogordo and I found Carlsbad. Go ahead and take a minute to try to find them on your own. So if you have not found them yet, pause this video until you do. If you have, well, we see Alamogordo is right here and Carlsbad is right here. And we're trying to find out how many miles we have to drive. Now, the key word is how many miles would you have to drive? So that means we can't do this because there's no road there. So what we have to do is we're going to put our 0 on Alamogordo, and then we're going to follow this US Highway 82 to Artesia. And we're going to see about how much. Okay, so put the 0 on Alamogordo, and then to Artesia is maybe about 90 miles. So it's about 90 miles to drive from Alamogordo to Artesia. Then we have to go, so I'm going to put that 0 back at Artesia, and then I'm going to end at Carlsbad. And we can see that from Artesia to Carlsbad is maybe about 30 miles. So that means we take the 90 miles from Alamogordo to Artesia and add it to the 30 miles from Artesia to Carlsbad. And so altogether, it's about 120 miles to drive from Alamogordo to Carlsbad. So make sure that you're paying attention to how I use this map scale, because you're going to have independent practice where you are going to have to do it again. But you're going to turn it over and do it on the back and do your next one on the back. So on the front, well, first let's do number 4. About how many miles is it from Santa Fe to Taos? Okay, so let's find Santa Fe and Taos. I've actually been to both of these places, and I've driven this drive that we're about to, well, I haven't driven, but family members have, because we did it once in 2015 when I was 25, and then we also did it once back in 2001 when I was 12. So, actually, no, I was 11. I turned 12 the next day. So, find Santa Fe, and then find Taos. Okay, if you have not found them yet, pause this video and find them. If you have, go ahead and check with me. Okay, so we're starting at the capital of New Mexico, which is Santa Fe, and we want to figure out, let's see, I can't see exactly where the dot is for Taos. Okay, so Taos is right there, and we want to figure out, okay, how many miles is it from Santa Fe to Taos? So, first, what we want to do is we want to take this, State Highway 518 to State Highway 76 to Chimayo. So, first, we are going to measure from Taos to Chimayo. So let's put the 0 miles at Taos. And we can see Chimayo is about right here. So we can say again, from Taos to Chimayo is about 50 miles. So we need to remember that. 30 miles. So remember that. Taos to Chimayo is 30 miles. Now we need to measure from Chimayo, get on high, and then on US 84 to Santa Fe. So we'll put the 0 at Chimayo because that's where we're starting off. And then we see from Chimayo to Santa Fe is again about 30 miles. So 30 miles from Taos to Chimayo plus 30 miles from Chimayo to Santa Fe is about 60 miles. Okay, so now you know how to read a road map. So what you're going to do now is you do have independent practice, and it's read a road map. You're going to have to do the same thing. So step 1, look at the types of roads. The interstate is 3 little lines with a symbol over it that has almost like a little black wave pattern on top. The U.S. highways have 2 lines with what looks like a little badge on it with the number. And then these state highways have 2 lines with a circle around the number. Then step 2 is to use the back of your Post-it. So on the front of this side, go ahead and label it New Mexico so you don't accidentally use it. And then on the back, so on the front, label it New Mexico so you don't accidentally use it. And then on the back, label it, this is a map of the Grand Canyon, So we're going to label it as Grand Canyon. Now, once you've done that, take your Post-it, line it up with the map scale up here, line it up with the miles first, and then label it, and then go up and then label it with the kilometers, because there might be some questions that ask you about kilometers and some that ask you about miles. So make sure you're using the correct side of your Post-it so that you're not accidentally measuring the distances in New Mexico, because our map scale in New Mexico goes from 0 to 100 miles and 0 to 100 kilometers, whereas the Grand Canyon that we're looking at right now is much smaller than the whole state of New Mexico. So it only goes from 0 to 50 miles or 0 to 50 kilometers. So make sure you're not using the wrong side. That's why you need to make sure that you label the 0, the 50, and the 100 for the New Mexico, and the 0, the 25, and the 50 for the Grand Canyon. That way you're sure that you're using the right side. Okay, remember, you're not just measuring, like in this question where it said, how many miles is it to drive from Alamogordo to Carlsbad? You're not just doing this, because there's no road. You need to make sure that you're following roads when you are trying to measure. So first, look at the map, use your Post-it to do your map scale, and then on the back, you'll answer the questions. So you're going to answer questions a lot like what we did in the practice. Which roads connect certain places, and what route would you take, what different roads, so you'd get on this road, and then you'd get on this road, and then you'd get on this road, and how far is it from one place to the other. So pay attention to what the question is asking. Pay attention to which side of your Post-it you're using. If you have Post-its at home and you just want to use a separate Post-it altogether, that's perfectly fine with me. But I just included this in case you did not have Post-its at home. Make sure you're being neat. Make sure you're paying close attention, because this is yours and it's not a textbook. You can go ahead and make little marks on it if you need to. You can make as many little marks as you want. Just make sure that you can still see everything. And then that's it. So if you have any questions about reading a road map, reach out to me later today and I will help you out. I'll help you make sure that you've got your Post-it labeled correctly if you need to, and I'll help you to find different places, whatever you need. Just make sure that you do try on your own, and make sure that you follow the steps just as I did. Okay, go ahead and get started, and let me know if you need any help.